With that, ladies and gentlemen, let us begin our discussion. I will now give the floor to our first speaker, Ambassador Asim. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Qasim. Welcome back. I think you mentioned the importance of a holistic approach and the relevance of this, what we call peace continuum, or this whole spectrum from prevention to conflict resolution to peacekeeping and peace building. I would say the correct words, the correct ideal, but in practice, easier said than done. So these are things that we aspire, but are not always able to achieve. But this is something that we should continue to work together, all member states, to try to come closer to this objective. And I'm happy that we are having this a panel on integrated approach towards the end of this seminar, because it really enables us this really overarching view of the bigger issues on which I believe is dependent the effectiveness and success of peacekeeping. So that's why we attach so much importance to this continuum that you mentioned. So briefly, I would like to touch on the integrated approach that we often mention. As I see it, integrated approach is not something that is just limited to multidimensional peacekeeping or multidimensional missions alone. Yes, it's true that it's in the multidimensional missions. This terminology is most visible, and it is actually there that this term became pronounced because in designing these multidimensional missions, we were actually trying to integrate various elements, various objectives into missions mandates, and that's how we call them multidimensional missions or integrated mandate missions. But if you come to look at it, even for traditional peacekeeping, as we have always said, that ultimately the success of these missions was tied to the political processes that were aimed at resolving these conflicts. So when implemented, that is also a kind of an integrated approach. So what I'm trying to say is that it's not enough just to observe ceasefires or to have this presence in buffer zones between two warring parties, but the ultimate objective even of that traditional peacekeeping mission is to have a political resolution of the conflict and to try to address the underlying root causes of that conflict. Now, this is more so interstate conflicts. It's true also that if you look at the history of the UN, somehow the track record of UN, including peacekeeping in resolving interstate conflicts, has not been as good as it is, or later, as we saw in the case of intrastate conflicts, and that was particularly the case in the 90s, following the end of the Cold War, when there was more kind of a collaborative environment within the Security Council that enabled the permanent members to come together and join hands in addressing some of the intrastate conflicts or civil wars that the Council was able to address. Now, coming to this second type of conflicts, which is the intrastate or civil wars, these are actually complex crises in the sense that there you have not only the political and security issues, but often interlinked socio-economic development, humanitarian, human rights, ethnic. There are many dimensions often to these conflicts or crises. That's why we call them complex crises. So it was truly very relevant to apply this comprehensive or holistic approach that you can call integrated approach to these complex crises and try to see how we can address the various interlinked and underlying issues that bedevil these situations. So that's kind of a background to the application of integrated approach to these missions. Now, the issue was that some of these situations, crises, were on the agenda of the Security Council. And there was this debate often, an internal discussion within the Council, whether Security Council was the right body, the right forum to address these situations which had dimensions other than political and peace and security dimensions. It was a question that was validly raised often in the Security Council. So there was a thinking of what needs to be done, how to better address these situations, because if you are not able to address the humanitarian or the development side of the situation, there was a lot of discussion already taking place in the UN, and the member states were in agreement largely that peace and security and development are interlinked. And there is this causal relationship. Many often said that the best way to achieve peace, and especially durable peace, was through development. So this aspect was very pronounced, but Security Council was not able to respond to such kind of a situation and environment. So this thinking was evolving, and I recall that ahead of the 2005 World Summit, when we had this report from the high-level panel that was established by Kofi Annan following the Iraq crisis. So there were some major institutional proposals that were on the table, including in this report. There was the proposal to convert the Commission on Human Rights to Human Rights Council, and also to address what I was mentioning, how to have this comprehensive approach to complex crises. There was a proposal for Peacebuilding Commission. I would like to recall that even before this report came to the member states, Pakistan, during its presidency of the Security Council in May 2004, we held an open debate which had exactly the same topic, complex crises. It was more focused on African situations, complex crises and comprehensive UN approach response. And during that debate, we circulated a non-paper with the proposal to establish what we called ad hoc composite committees. And we proposed what would be the composition of these committees. So we had members coming from the Security Council, members drawn from the ECOSOC, from the General Assembly, leading troop contributors, leading financial contributors, IFIs, regional countries, and above all, the country concerned. So these were ad hoc mechanisms that were to be put in place to help the Security Council discuss in more detail how to address these complex crises. So I'm happy to recall that, what we proposed is, and particularly also in terms of numbers that we were proposing, they were picked up also by the high-level panel, and eventually what we had in Peacebuilding Commission and its various country-specific configurations, there was something similar to those ad hoc composite committees. So, looking back, and because now we are having this 20-year review of the peacebuilding architecture, in my view, it was a brilliant idea. It brought together all the relevant actors, including the country concerned. But the problem was about its implementation, about the actual application of this idea on the situations that were on the agenda. So there lies the problem that I think it's a good opportunity now to try to address as part of this 20-year review, to see as to what went wrong and what needs to be done better. Number one, I would like to say that the whole idea that we would have members from the ECOSOC and members from the General Assembly and the TCCs would be there, financial contributors, IFIs, it was to serve some purpose. To me, it appears that that purpose has not really or fully been served. So we should expect, for example, if there are members sitting in the Peacebuilding Commission who are actually coming from the ECOSOC, they should be able to relate the work of the Commission to what ECOSOC can do and contribute in trying to address those complex crises. Similarly, the members of the Security Council should be the link between the Commission and the Council, same for the General Assembly members, and then how the donors, how the troop contributors who are there, how they can contribute, to this, to establishing this linkage between peacekeeping and peace building. And on top of all, the role of the IFIs, so the World Bank, especially, and others. This we were discussing the other day also, that initially there was an enthusiasm, a presence, they were attending the meetings, but subsequently with time this enthusiasm lost its way somewhere. So I think we need to bring back that spirit that led to the establishment of the Peacebuilding Commission, to try to see how it can serve its purpose better. Secondly, a little bit about conflict prevention. Again, it's a coveted objective, but really if you look at practice, it's even very difficult to measure, this concept, because with prevention sometimes comes the perception of interference. So if you're trying to do early prevention, if trying to intervene early in some situations, normally the country concerned might become apprehensive that, the international community or the Security Council or the Commission are trying to intervene. So there is a natural resistance, and if you recall, even in the case of the Peacebuilding Commission, there was initially this discussion that it should not be limited to just the post-conflict situations. So, but eventually, because of this apprehension, this early intervening or prevention side was eliminated, and the Peacebuilding Commission was reduced to just the post-conflict situations. So I think in my view, it's important to recall that. Secondly, we need to see what and how the agenda of the Peacebuilding Commission evolved, in terms of having country-specific situations on the agenda of the Council. So we need to recall that initially there was this hesitancy on part of the relevant countries to agree to be on the agenda of the Peacebuilding Commission. So we need to see what were the reasons. Clearly, for some, they saw that there was not going to be enough gain in coming on the agenda of the Council. For some, there was a little bit of attraction from the perspective of the funds that were available through the PBF, slightly relatively easier availability. For some, it was a way perhaps to get off the agenda of the Security Council, because also some countries are eager to get off the agenda of the Security Council. So these were things that bedeviled the work of the Commission in the initial phases. So in any case, how the things evolved in the Peacebuilding Commission, we need to recall that even the funding that was available through the fund, it was a very small amount usually. It was not enough to address the larger needs of the countries that were emerging from conflict. Slightly different approach, better access to larger assistance from the international community was required, but that was not coming. So in hindsight, I think there were many issues that prevented the Peacebuilding Commission to realize its full potential. But it would be fair to acknowledge that there were these issues and that we need to address them if we really need to move forward. And so that's the opportunity here that we have. Some points that I would like to highlight as to what should be done and what could be done differently. First, to realize that the requirements of the countries emerging from conflict are bigger, and they are bigger than what can be addressed in the short term through the Peacebuilding Fund. And the requirements are such that they will need time to be addressed. So you need this, what we call strategic patience, continued attention, focus of the international community on that situation. I think that is very important. And secondly, we need to see, I think we have still not been able to really resolve this as to how we can have the development side of the UN working in sync with the political and peace and security side of the UN. That is also very important if we want to have, bodies like Peacebuilding Commission really deliver. Thirdly, it was always there, it was said all the time that, we want the ownership, we want the primacy to be accorded to the priorities of the country concerned. The national leadership was very, very important, but somehow, we were falling through. When we were actually discussing this, the priorities of the donors and others were getting relatively more importance. Next, I think the challenge of bridging the gaps between peacekeeping and peace building, especially during the transition, that still remains a big challenge. Lastly, I would say that one major challenge was and still remains as to how we can align the national priorities of the country concerned with the priorities of the countries in the region and the broader international community. So if we can align these priorities behind the main single objective of creating sustainable peace and stability in the country concerned, that would ensure success. Lastly, in the case of integrated approach and complex crises, multidimensional missions, more than 10 years ago, when Pakistan was last on the Security Council in 2013, as you mentioned, we brought this initiative. We had a debate on integrated missions and missions with multidimensional mandates, and what needs to be done, what should be the response of the UN. And the end result was this Resolution 2086, which was a landmark in the sense that it was actually not only the first resolution on multidimensional peacekeeping by the Security Council, but first ever dedicated resolution of the Security Council on peacekeeping itself. So, and naturally, it was a huge success. It was co-sponsored by all 15 members of the Security Council, which is very, very rare. And it kind of provided a blueprint for the UN for many years to come on how to conduct multidimensional peacekeeping. So that was another contribution, in my view, to this whole discussion about peacekeeping, its interlinkage with peace building, conflict prevention, and all of that. And if you look back at this resolution, basically it is about two things. It addressed the expanded scope of mandates in these complex crises and how the UN would respond to these expanded scope of mandates through an integrated approach. So I think I would stop here. I'm sure Elizabeth is going to add a different perspective to this discussion, and Mr. Morikawa as well. We will be subsequently happy to take some comments and questions. Thank you.